This episode of Legacy Curious is brought to you by Legacy Protectors. Customize insurance strategies for business owners and families who aspire to create a lasting legacy. Hello there, and welcome to Legacy Curious, the show where we explore what it really means to protect, grow, and pass on everything you've worked so hard to build. I'm your host, David Gravelle. I'm a life insurance strategist, business legacy coach, and founder of Legacy Protectors. Each episode, I sit down with the bold thinkers, entrepreneurs, and everyday visionaries who are turning their values into lasting impact in business, in life, and across generations. On today's episode, we welcome back Sara Orellana. With over 19 years of experience in business management, nonprofit leadership, coaching, and public health, Sara brings a multidimensional perspective to how organizations and the people within them can grow with intention and impact. Check out her previous appearance on Legacy Curious to learn how her personal journey from academic foundations in English, community services, and public health to the founding and building of Three Raptor Consulting. I've asked Sara back on the podcast to teach us about how grant funding works, who it's for, how to apply, and ultimately build the internal structures necessary to consistently secure and manage funding successfully. Well, hello again, Sara. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Hi, David. Thank you so much for having me on again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're our one of our first returning guests, one of our first guests as well. So I want to thank you for that. Thanks for
Yeah.
helping us launch the channel. We've coming up on our first 100 subscribers. We're at 97 as of today, so we're going to be over 100 soon. Hopefully, we'll get a little bit
Oh,
momentum off
you
of
will.
this
You will.
video. Yeah, and again, thank you for the first one. If everyone that's watching wants to go check out Sara's legacy story, learn more about her business and capabilities that she's able to help you with, that video is available here too. And then for today, wanted to first off just let you tell us what you've been up to since then. What's been going on in your world and with Three Raptor Consulting?
Sure. So, Through Vector Consulting is doing absolutely great. We are in a period where we had taken a pause on growth to stabilize, and now we're ready to launch into growth again. So, we are actively looking for new clients. And we have a very strategic approach to grant writing, which is what we're going to talk about today, which is one of my favorite things. So, I'm going to get to talk about strategy and grant, but we're really doing great. I'm also ironically getting ready to launch my own podcast. Very different from yours. Mine is more storytelling, meeting people and just telling stories because that is honestly where one of my passions is just learning stories. So I'll have to follow up with you very soon about getting you on our show so we can reverse the script and I can ask you the hot questions. But that's really it. I've been focusing on finding balance to life, meeting great people, and looking for ways to strengthen our business. So that's about it.
Well, good, good. Well, we're looking forward to that, and we'll make sure that when you're ready to share some of the links for that podcast, we'll put them in the description here as well. So if anybody's watching this, in the future, more than likely by the first week of September, we'll have updated description here. Those links will be in there. So great. So for today, kind of alluded to what our focus is, and that's on grant writing. And,
Yes.
I want to just jump right in and get to some of the good stuff. So help us understand kind of some of the differences
Yeah.
between writing grants for nonprofits versus for-profit small businesses, because we're probably going to have both of those types of people watching today.
And that's a really great question. And I want to be very strategic in how I answer this. So, in having been an executive director of all different size nonprofits, from small to multi-county to statewide to owning a business, I can tell you when we're speaking just about business processes, small businesses and nonprofits should operate exactly the same. There should be very little difference with that. And one of the biggest misconceptions that I think I would like to speak to just really quickly here is that nonprofits can make a profit. It just has to be shown differently in their budget. So once you understand that as a small business, you should be solving a need and you should be very clear on what that problem statement is and what that need is. The biggest thing then is going to be the amounts of money and the types of grants that you can ask, that you can apply for. So things have shifted drastically since the pandemic. If you are a nonprofit, there are private foundation grants, there's state and county local grants, as well as federal grants. If you are a for-profit, 9 times out of 10, your options are county grants, state grants, and federal grants. There are organizations that are opening up something similar to a private foundation for small businesses. The amounts that you can ask for are just quite a bit less. But as I like to always point out, every dollar helps, every dollar adds up. And so the way that you should approach every grant, the way that I do it for my clients is read it through cover to cover and have a very honest conversation with yourself and ask yourself, is the time and effort it's going to take me to write this? And then don't forget to pay attention to the follow up, the reporting, and the requirements. Is that worth the amount of money that I'll be able to apply for? And if the answer is yes, then jump right in. And there's a lot of tips that I can share in here on how to help you be successful. So let me just say, understanding the different kinds that you can approach that you can apply for is the biggest difference. How you approach them and how you write them is the same. So we're going to be talking about the same skills for both.
Sure, great. Okay, so how might an organization know they're ready before they start applying? Like what are some of the key indicators that they have to have in place in order to, be successful after they've written a grant application?
So I think the way to look at this is to put yourself in the shoes of, I've been awarded this grant. Can I manage it? So you'll know if you're eligible or in a place to apply for grants if you are ready to manage grants. And managing grants is identical to it's project management. Let me just be very frank. It's project management. And so if you have a person who, depending on the size of the grant or the project, can either work part-time or full-time on that, managing that process, tracking outcomes, putting together reports, building relationships with foundations and funders, then you are ready to to apply for grants. You also need to make sure that you have really strong foundational documents. So think of your business like building a house. If your foundation is very strong, if you have all of your onboarding documents, all of your policies, and all of your documents together from when you launched your business, and you feel like then you've also got a good capability statement, a good problem statement, and data to back you up, you are 100% ready to apply for a grant.
Okay, so let's assume that, our audience has done that work and all of that is in place. What is the process like? What does it look like from finding a grant opportunity to getting ready and applying for it and then managing it after? Because like you said, just getting the money is only half the battle, right?
Right.
You've got to use it wisely, prove that you've used it wisely. And so maybe walk us through the process.
Sure. So there's a lot of databases that you can pay for to look for different grants. I recommend not paying for those immediately because that's a lot of money to invest. Go to your public library or the library at your local college. They should have access to those databases that you can use as well for free. In addition, you can set up Google alerts and you can just do Google searches to find foundations in your area and reach out to them. Once that's in place, then here's the process. Once you find a grant, it's going to be overwhelming. So if you just walk in saying, okay, they're going to try to overwhelm me, that's the key here. They want to see if I can do everything to get to the end. And you walk in with a very positive attitude, then you're going to do it. So what I do and what I tell everybody else to do is read that grant application from start to finish. Just sit down and read it. For me, because I have ADHD, I need it to be printed out on something I can write on. So figure out how your reading comprehension works, how you can do that. Once you've read it through back to front, then what I do is I transfer all the questions into a Word document. I don't ever work in a portal and I don't ever work in a grant application. That's just too nerve-wracking, right? And then honestly, this is going to sound so simple. I work on one question at a time. I fully answer that question. I make sure I'm happy about that question. And then I move to the next question. And if you tackle it as many short essays throughout the whole thing, you go through much quicker. Now, a pro tip that I'm going to give you here is if you have somebody that you trust, somebody that you are willing to share the classified confidential pieces of your business with or nonprofit with, don't talk to them about this grant at all. Keep it a complete secret. And the reason being is once you've written it, you're going to ask them to proofread it. But you're going to ask them to proofread it, not necessarily for grammar, but for what they comprehend. And make sure it's somebody who will give you those detailed answers and will say, this is what I understood, this is what I comprehended, this is what I got. And you don't want to talk to them about it because you don't want to leave them. And if you can get it to a place where that key trusted person who's going to be brutally honest with you can say back to you exactly what you were trying to say in that grant, you know you have a winning grant application.
Okay, great advice. So how would they know when to engage someone like you or outside help? Is it a must-have? Is it maybe really nice to have on the first few that they apply for to maybe get their
Right.
feet under them, or is it something that they want to establish a relationship and continually work with you or someone similar?
That's a good question. So, as far as engaging any kind of grant writer, the questions that you want to ask yourself are how much time do you have to invest and how much money do you have to invest? You also want to look at the size of the foundations that you're going after. If they are local community foundations, foundations that you can create an appointment and walk into, you probably don't need a grant writer unless you just honestly don't have the time. So, it's kind of being really honest with yourself, looking what's on your plate and asking yourself, what can you manage? Like for me, I know it probably sounds crazy, but bookkeeping is something that is very trying for me to manage. So I've hired a bookkeeper. So ask yourself, can I handle this? Do I need the extra help? And I will tell you, hiring a grant writer outside of your organization is always less costly than hiring a full-time staff member.
Okay. And so what internal systems should a company, an organization have in place to track these? Because I'm imagining there's going to be more than one that they'll want to apply for, and there's going to be different deadlines, different requirements. And so is there a dashboard that you can recommend, or how do they do this?
Right. So, because of my background working with nonprofits, I'm always looking for what's free or what's cheap. And there's definitely, if you subscribe to different databases, you can use them to track your grant applications. I personally, I find them cumbersome and tedious, and they usually want information that you don't necessarily need. So what I do is I build a dashboard, so to speak, in Excel, and I use that to track everything and to plan. So in one workbook, you'll see all the years of work that I've done with that organization. And then in addition to that, for each year, either calendar year or fiscal year, you'll see what grants we've applied for, what they're for, a link to the application and what their due date is and what the decision was. And then you'll also see what's coming in planning. So Excel or Sheets, it can honestly be your best friend for tracking this. Or you know what I've seen other people use very successfully is a calendar, like just making events in their calendar. So I would say to start with those free before you go forward. And then my personal favorite, if you're going to spend money, is anything that you can use as a Kanban chart. Kanban charts are grant writers' best friends. So they're the kind of project management where you can literally move like a sticky note from one column to the next. And that's the best way to manage that on a paid subscription.
Okay, so some of the tools that you could provide for your clients, are they able to be used once they've won a grant to help them spend the money wisely, track the compliance they may need to have, and maybe do any other reporting back to the foundation that granted them the money?
So, as far as like spending wisely, with any grant application, you have to put together a budget. And typically, and this is what I teach and what I say when I teach grant writing is however you say you're going to spend that money is how you have to spend it. So, let's say you wrote a grant to bake apple pies. If you wrote for Granny Smith apples and something happened, and within a 100-mile radius, there are no Granny Smith apples to be had, you can not go and buy Gala apples without written permission from that foundation. So as far as how you're going to spend the money and spending it wisely, it has to all be done before in that grant application. The best thing to do is to either get your in-house accountant slash bookkeeper or your bookkeeper to input that specific budget into your accounting software, and then it can track it for you and actually physically produce the financial report for you. As far as reporting requirements, what I've always done, and you're going to laugh, is because I still use a paper planner, I will photocopy the award letter because the award letter always gives you those key dates. And I will stick it in my planner a month to 6 weeks before that report is due. And that's my reminder to do that grant. Everybody else I've seen use digital calendars. If you get a very, very large grant, a state or federal grant, you're going to want to have one employee who's dedicated to managing it. And because I'm not a micromanager, I usually ask them to set the way they want to manage it, but you want to make sure you also understand that process and could step in case something happened to them.
Okay, so that is a role that maybe your grant writing specialist would help, provide, right? You want to lean on
Yes.
them
Oh,
not just to
yes.
help you win it, but to make sure that you're being compliant and how you're spending it and using that money and any other learning that
And
could
if
come through that.
And if I could just say something here that is really close to my heart, yes, we can definitely help you track that money. We can help you with the spending. But here's what I want to say that is the most important is if you need to make alterations, if you need to pivot and adapt in the middle of your grant, that is 100% okay. And that is not a failure. That is a win because you recognize that. And that's why the foundation will have assigned a program officer to you, or they'll give you a contact if it's a smaller foundation who you can reach out to. And I always recommend whether they want regular reporting or not, keep in touch with this person. Email them at least quarterly so that when you do need to pivot and adapt, they have an established relationship. You can explain to them why they've watched this program and they're always going to do that pivot and adapt. And what that does is that helps you create that closer relationship so that they're going to want to invest in you. If you have to pivot and adapt on your budget, the same thing. Now let's fast forward to the very end of the grant and let's say for whatever reason, the program did not work out and you didn't get the anticipated results. That is never an issue. A lot of people think that that's a failure. Again, that's not a failure as long as you approach it from a learning status so that when you're putting that grant report together, you can say, we did not meet this goal because of X, Y, and Z. The next time around, this is the change we're going to make. And if you can show that in that grant report, 9 times out of 10, they're going to award the grant to you again.
Okay, so it sounds like those relationships are crucial, not only for,
Yes.
success on the current grant, but continued opportunities in the future. So let's talk just a bit about, fostering those up front, maybe when you've lost an application. And, I'm sure
Mhm.
there's some emotion that comes in with that, but that sounds like a good learning
Yes.
opportunity as well. And to keep that
Yes.
relationship that you've started so that potentially the next grant application, you're going to have a higher chance of success. Does that all sound fair?
That's all very fair. I would say the way that I approach every grant, and I have been doing this over 20 years, so I'm sure most people consider me an expert. In my head, I don't ever let myself think that I'm an expert because I want to continually learn. Just this morning, I was reading articles on how to be a better grant writer. You have to always learn and sharpen your skills. But with that being said, I approach every grant as a learning opportunity. And I literally sit down and think, what am I going to get to learn from this? Even though now I write grants for clients, not for my own nonprofit. And so when you get that declination, which is heartbreaking, I always say drink some water, go for a walk, get some sunshine, then sit down and send them a very kind email and ask them for a follow-up meetings for them to explain why you were declined. It could be that they just need to establish a better relationship with you. Sometimes in unwritten policies, they'll decline you once or twice before they actually fund you because they want to see longevity. Or it could just be they used up all of your funds. But when you get that follow-up meeting, that's the real magic. That's where that magic happens because you're able to establish a relationship, but you can ask those really difficult questions like, how should I have answered this? What should I have done? And so getting those relationships established is key. And if I can also kind of say at the front end, if you have the luxury of time and you can maybe ideally, if we were speaking in my ideal world and you could have 6 months to launch a grant writing campaign, if you could send outreach letters to foundations and get meetings before you even apply, that is the absolute best way to start. Because I have worked with so many foundations that award millions and millions of dollars who will literally, you can pick up the phone and say, I don't understand what you're asking this question. And it's always because we overread and we overthink when we're stressed, right? And they'll explain to you, this is what we're looking for. I had one foundation in Oklahoma sit down with me. I was writing a general ops grant, and those can be very vague because they're not specific. And they're like, for general operations, this is how we want you to answer every question. And gave me notes for each question. So relationship is key at the front and at the end.
Okay, great. And so let's talk about when to engage you then. It sounds like the earlier the better would be good advice before they even know there's a grant that they want to apply for, maybe when they're establishing their own internal
Yeah.
processes or trying to identify where to find grants. All that sounds like you're able to help.
We work at every stage of grant writing. And I will tell you, I enjoy it the most at the front end because of the kind of brain that I have. I love establishing the programs and the write-ups and you working to fine tune everything and getting all of those together. But you also, I mean, nonprofits or businesses have to understand that that could be a 6 month process to get you up to speed and create the strategies and the documents to get you to that point. But I know even in the work that you do, if it's front end heavy, it always pays off at the end. And so having that luxury of time of helping you get it together and maybe even launching a few donor campaigns so you already have money coming in that foundations can see before is key. So yeah, you want to work with a grant writing professional from the very beginning. And you don't want to rush into it. You don't want to find a grant and say, oh, it's due in a week, let me get this done. Now, if you're a seasoned grant professional and you're working with a nonprofit who already has everything in place, you can do that grant in a week. But if you're just starting out, you probably need to give yourself more time.
Yeah, that's always the best advice, right? Start early, get that planning in place, get your systems established. You don't want to be doing this, building the airplane while you're flying it. Talk a bit about what might be coming down in the future. When any changes in this type of world that people
Right.
should start to be aware of? Any new opportunities? What's the future hold for grant writing?
So great question. So I would say if I was predicting the future and what I'm saying to you is worth a penny, honestly. So let's take this with a grain of salt. But from what I'm hearing, what I'm reading, one of the best resources, whether you're for profit or nonprofit, to follow is the National Council of Nonprofits. I follow them on LinkedIn. I highly suggest you follow them because they're the ones who are actively advocating to stop some of the changes that could happen. If you are functioning on federal or state dollars, because a lot of your state dollars are trickle down federal funds, I would say start creating plans B through Z for those funds to not be around very soon. Figure out ways to replace those funds and be creative. Now, as far as with private foundations, what I am seeing is a change to more of wanting to fund what they're calling emergency funds. And so they're realizing that a lot of federal and state funds are being cut. And so they're wanting to fund programs that meet Maslow's hierarchy of needs, those most basic needs. So you're looking at housing, looking at safety, you're looking at food, you're looking at education, elderly, all of those key needs. Another great so within all of that change, what is good that is coming out of this is a lot of conversations. So because of this change that is happening, my recommendation is to look at expanding donor dollars, to look at creative ways to raise money, but also to think collaboratively and partnerships. Is there a way to partner with other nonprofits or partner with another small business to write this grant and to raise funds? Because when you partner, you have a larger target audience and a larger impact that you make. And right now, because the dollars are so few, people are wanting to make the biggest impact possible. So look for those creative applications where you can partner with others. It's going to make the biggest splash and meet basic needs.
Okay, great advice throughout this whole interview. Thank you so much, Sarah. Why don't you remind our audience how to get in touch with you and
Yes.
what engagement with you looks like?
Sure. So the best way to get a hold of us is at our website. It's the number three, Raptor like the dinosaur consulting. It's just through raptorconsulting.com. You can send us a message through that, or you can email me, Sarah, Sara, at 3raptorconsulting.com, and I will 100% get back to you. We offer everything. So we offer strategic planning. We offer classes for boards on how to help build relationships, on how to engage your board, on how to get your board into fundraising. We will help you create strategies of creative and unique different ways to fundraise. We will also get you ready for grant writing, support you in grant writing, and then help you afterwards with that management of that grant writing. We'll help you with policies to put in place. And we usually come up with some pretty creative ideas on how to engage right now. Corporations, a lot of corporations are really looking at that community responsibility and giving back. Donors and key places that you can do speaking events where you can meet those community key people who can introduce you to foundations or who have donations to make themselves. So I would say think of us as kind of your one-stop shop for finding all of those key things that you need to start and successfully run a small business or a nonprofit, specifically with funding. And if we don't do it, we have partners who do it and we can direct you to them.
That's great. Well, again, thanks so much for being here, Sarah. We'll
Thank
call
you.
it enough for today, and we'll look forward to hearing from you in the future. Good luck with launching your
All
podcast.
right. Thank you so much. Thank you, David. I'll be in touch soon.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you to our listeners and audience for spending time with us today on Legacy Curious. I hope this conversation gave you some insight, encouragement, or just that little spark you needed to keep you moving forward in your own legacy journey. If you got value from today's episode, please take a second to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone else who's building something that matters. And if you're ready to take that next step, protecting your business, planning for retirement, or passing on your legacy with purpose, head to legacyprotectors.life to schedule a conversation. Until next time, I'm your host, David Gravelle, reminding you to stay curious, stay committed, and keep building something worth passing on.